Broadcasting weekly on podcast platforms and Alexa, the UK's premier grassroots pro-European radio show. This is 16 Million Rising. March on. That's great.
Okay.
So I'm delighted to be joined now by original Sex Pistol, writer of Anarchy in the UK, God Save the Queen, I think pretty much most of Nevermind the Bollocks, and punk legend Glen Matlock. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Hello, Ben. How you doing? Nice.
Great to see you.
Thanks for having us on.
Absolute pleasure. Now, you've got a brand new solo album coming out at the end of April, I believe. Is it the 20th?
End of April. That's right. Yes, 27th digital release and 28th physical. I don't know what the difference makes, but
well, it depends how people consume their media these days. Will it be released on vinyl?
It's coming out on vinyl. In fact, there's going to be a limited edition coloured vinyl, which I believe is going to be dirty orange.
Dirty orange. That's the first. Well, people sometimes do white vinyl, red vinyl, but why dirty orange?
Why not?
What exactly? Well, we'll get to the album in a moment. There's lots
well, I'll tell you why, because
Go on.
They said, how about this orange? And I said, it's a bit too clean. How about a dirty orange? And that's what we got.
Dirty orange. Okay, that's great. Sort of rusty tomato would be more epic, I think, at the moment, with the way things are going. Goodness me.
We'll get to that. Find one.
If you can find one. We'll get to that in a moment. But for those of you who don't know, and there may be some listeners out there, I doubt it, but could you just give us a quick sort of trek through your career to date in music? Am I right in thinking that it all started for you in Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood's shop on the King's Road?
Yeah, I used to be the Saturday lad in a teddy boy shop called Let It Rock, which was kind of weird because everything that was going on in London at the time was long hair flares and sparkly jackets and things, and he was making sort of 50s clothing for teddy boys because he saw it as a way of being a bit different, and it kind of was really, you know, and it was going back to kind of more original earthy rock and roll than some bands singing about flying down to Rio or, singing about hobgoblins.
Absolutely.
But mind you, I only found out recently what a hobgoblin is. You know what a hobgoblin is?
I don't know. I've got an idea, but no, you tell me.
Well, he's the top goblin. So you get goblins and then you get a hobgoblin. So if you think of a cooker and you have a hob in it, it's the top bit, isn't it? So it makes some kind of sense, really.
It does. That one goes all the way up to 11. That goes all the way up to 11. So you met the other members of the Sex Pistols in that shop. And was that the very first band that you were in at 16?
No, I'd sort of done a little bit of playing with a couple of mates at school, but we weren't really a band. We did get asked to play at the school dance, but a few weeks beforehand, the vice headmaster, who was also my maths teacher, he was the bane of my life. He said we were too loud and we should stop practicing. And then he had the audacity to ask us at the school play at the school dance, and I said no. And he said, why not? And I said, because we'd be rubbish. He said, why would you be rubbish? He said, because you wouldn't let us rehearse. And he went, he couldn't really answer that one. So I thought, start as you mean to go on, and it's kind of good to do your own work, music.
Absolutely. So the Sex Pistols, I think everybody knows everything that, well, not everything there is to know about the Sex Pistols, but you were only 16 when you joined the band, weren't you?
Well, yeah, 16 going on 17.
Yeah.
But that's when I met the guys and we started hanging out and playing a little bit. Yeah. And then we sort of got to meet Steve and Paul. And Steve was a singer originally, and he got kind of better on the guitar, moved to guitar. The other guitarist we had, Wally Nightingale, went, and then we was a lookout for a singer, and we found John. He was another guy came in the shop, and he was a totally different kettle of fish. But, that's what it all was, really.
So after the Sex Pistols, obviously you hooked up with Midure and others, and tell us about that experience afterwards.
Well, that was my band after the Pistols, and it would have been quite easy for me to try and make a Sex Pistols Mark II, but then it would just been a second division one. So I wanted to do something slightly different, which is why I asked Mitch to join, because he had a fantastic sort of pop, distinctive voice. Yep. And I thought I'd put the cat amongst the pigeons with the punks, move on to something else. which is what I do. You know, and I feel kind of proud of the fact that Major's really carved a career for himself. I think I gave him a bit of a chance, although he probably done something anyway. But
Yeah,
you know, he was a kind of a prime mover in his canny Scotsman kind of way. You know, he's a class act.
sure. I mean, you've
So
played with a whole bunch of other bands as well. I mean, Blondie as well.
I'm currently in Blondie,
You're currently in Blondie, The Damned.
well, The Damned, I did a session for Rat Scabies as a mate many years ago, and I thought it was
Yeah,
just a thing that ended up on the Damned album. I wouldn't really say I was in The Damned at all, but
sure.
I like them. They're friends of mine. I mean, all these bands,
Yeah,
you know, when you're gigging, you go out and you do gigs, and then somebody's done a gig in the same town, you go to some other club and you bump into people, and you do that over
yeah,
20, 30 years. You keep saying the same people and you got something in common, you become mates.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
we don't
last
all
week,
live in each other's pockets, but
no.
when I was touring Blondie with Blondie in the States, the Dam was supporting us, you know, so we was hanging out. So
That's interesting because I was speaking to Paul Gray, the bassist from The Damned, who's now one quarter of Wingmen
yeah,
last month, and their album obviously bears some similarities to the current work that you're doing in terms of what's inspired it. We'll get onto that album in a moment. There was one thing I wanted to ask you about. You recently did an interview for the Big Issue magazine. I was very interested to read that you said if you could speak to your younger self now, you'd tell your younger self to stay in art college. Really?
yeah. I mean, did I say that? I think I probably did actually.
I think you
Yeah, I
did.
thought it was kind of cool. You know,
Yeah.
when I went to art college, did a foundation year where you do a little bit of everything, you know, to kind of decide what your discipline is, and got in to do a degree in fine art painting. But in the summer
Mm.
holidays, I decided to take the pistol seriously. Went in on the first day of term, booked a show, which turned out to be the first pistol show we played, and then said, I'm not coming, I'm joining a rock and roll band. I thought they was going to say, no, Glenn, don't, we need you. And they went, all right then. I was kind of stuck. But I really at that stage, I could have done a bit of both, you know.
Yeah. Do you still dabble in painting or?
No, but if I go into an art gallery, I know exactly what's wrong with everybody else's work, whether it's Suzanne or Damien Hirst, you know. And I could
Brilliant.
have been, really, if I stayed on, I could have been not the second Damien Hirst. He could have been the second Glen Matlock.
I was going to
Think about
say,
that.
to imagine him being in the Sex Pistols, I suppose it could have worked. I mean, who's to say?
No, I mean, art-wise, you know.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think, I
absolutely.
think Damien's quite cool, but he can't draw that well.
Now, you've been doing the media rounds a lot recently, and I think both on Sky and the BBC, you've said that you're not angry, you're livid.
Yeah.
Now, Brexit aside for one moment, because we're going to get onto that in a second, what are the other things, the people, the injustices that most infuriate you right now? And then we'll get on to what are the solutions.
Well, I think this all part and parcel of the same thing. I think the Tories didn't have anything to offer apart from this sort of kind of ersatz patriotism, which was wrapped up in Brexit, and they
Yeah.
mugged people into voting for them because of that, and it's enabled them to carry on this right wing agenda, which basically just protects their offshore banking business, as far as I can see. And there's not much use for anybody else, you know. And one of the
Yeah.
best things that's happened in my lifetime was freedom of movement in Europe, and it's been taken away. And it wasn't explained to people that it was a two-way street.
Mm.
And it's really going to impinge on people in the music business and other people as well. You know, it's wrong. It's a backward step across the world. I think it's doomed to failure. And the sooner people wise up to it, the better.
You've hit
Really.
the nail on the head there. I think some people didn't realize it was a two-way street. They really thought we could stop all the black and brown faces coming into the country, but we could still do whatever we wanted. And
Yeah.
it wasn't explained to them, was it?
No, it wasn't. And you know what? I was almost physically sick when what's her name? The former home.
Priti Patel.
Pretty
Priti
Tell got up and
Patel.
said, and now we've done away with freedom of movement.
Yeah.
With this really smug
Yeah.
grin from a barely British caste system woman. It really, I'm not a violent man, but I wanted to slap her one.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
I think we all did. And her successor, Suella Braverman, is cut from exactly the same cloth.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, it's pulling up the ladder behind you.
Yeah.
I think it's very, I think they're trying to be more British than the British, and I think it just shows some kind of, you know, I went and did some work in India with this friend of mine, a guy called Alluri is his stage name, very good musician. His father's quite well-to-do and works in software. But I went to Mumbai, and he was saying, their families are renowned, and people don't like them over there. For that
Goodness
very
me.
reason.
It's so sad. I mean, obviously, our listeners hate Brexit with a passion. I mean, it was a terrible idea to begin with. It's been delivered disastrously, and the evidence now, fortunately, points quite clearly to a country waking up to the giant con that was subjected to them, that they were victims of. What for you, alongside freedom of movement, which is obviously a big one, are the other most wrong-headed aspects of Brexit?
Well, I just think generally the whole thing is all part and parcel of the same thing. The fact that we're shortage of fruit pickers, shortage of people working in our hospitals, it's driven prices up. You can't go and buy a packet of broccoli without it going off in a day and a half. All those things. I mean, they're silly little things, but why? Why? If I was in Paris recently, I went over, I wasn't working, I was just hanging out, something. Going to the supermarket, and it's this abundance of beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And here, it ain't. Why do we have to be second best?
It's just deciding what would be the best thing to do as regards cooperating with your nearest friends and allies economically and culturally, and then doing 180 degrees on it, doing the exact opposite. It is bonkers. I was wondering, as a touring artist, have you experienced any of the barriers Brexit's put up, or have any of your current band members that you're working with for musicians? And what do you
Well, a
see?
little thing for a start. In
Yeah,
lockdown, I sort of put a few adverts up for my back albums and things, and was doing quite well in the
yeah,
little cottage industry,
yeah.
and quite enjoyed it. I got matey with a woman who worked behind the counter in the Indian shop where I got sub post office there, taking 20 or 30 records in, and it just proved to become too difficult to do.
Yeah.
Too much paperwork. You have to hike the prices up. People weren't interested, so that's curtailed that.
Yeah.
And it's not just me. Anybody's got some kind of small export business like that.
Yeah.
I haven't been touring so much with my project because I've been working on getting a record out and it hasn't worked like that. But my son's in a band.
All right.
Yeah, and he's been touring in Europe, but then he wanted to do a recording session in a chateau in France, which was a nice experience. It was a very good rate, and they worked it out. If they did a month recording there, they wouldn't be able to go and tour because it'd be eating right into their 90 days. I know musicians are like session musicians who have quite big jobs with different artists who can't do it because the people can't depend on them. I know people who are actors and actresses who go for a job and they say, "Oh, you got EU passport?" No, they get passed over.
So it's the paperwork, it's the expense, it's the 90-day limit. There's so many barriers that we've put up for no good reason that I think
they put up. They've put up.
Absolutely, the Tories have put up because it's the Tory Brexit. No, that's very, very true. Do you worry and do you have concerns for, say, young people at the moment starting out in the music industry in a band, cutting their teeth in Europe and internationally?
Yeah, just for all those reasons we've just been saying. And I've got first-hand experience with my son. And there are kind of ways around it, but why should they have to be ways around it?
Yeah.
And especially, I said this on BBC News, the EU offered our government a way around it, but it had to be reciprocal. And because it was reciprocal, our government turned it down. Well, thanks a fucking lot,
Yeah, you're completely right. And that's what I think really, really grates with a lot of musicians and anyone, like you say, in the creative artist industries, whether it's ballet, opera, orchestras, bands, singers, solo artists, it's all the same. I mean, we've really pulled up the drawbridge here, and for absolutely no good reason. So, Glenn, the album Consequences Coming, it's out in April. I've been fortunate enough to have a listen to it in full, and I'm really looking forward to playing tracks as they come through after that on the show. And I know our listeners are going to enjoy it. Head on a Stick was the first single that you released. We played it a couple of weeks back. Whose heads specifically?
Well, any of this bunch of Tory charlatans that are around in the Farages of this world. I don't know if you ever go on Twitter. On Twitter, I actually sent the track to Steve Bray because I'm sort of mate with him. Him and his missus got a load of pictures of this Tory bunch of
you don't have to watch. You don't have
toe rags.
You don't have to watch your language here, Glenn. You don't have to watch your language.
Anyway, they put pictures of their heads on sticks and they banged the track outside the Houses of Parliament. So
They did.
I was quite chuffed about that.
That's
Really.
brilliant.
You know?
It's, I mean, I know you often refer to it being a metaphor, and of course it is a metaphor, but believe me, I think you.
Yeah, you know, but if somebody laid into them, I probably wouldn't do it, but I would have held their coat.
Yeah, I completely understand. So some of the other tracks on the album, are they, I mean, are they all about what makes you angry? Are they all about Brexit?
No, they're not all what makes me angry. There's about 5 or 6 tracks that can be controlled. I was originally going to
Yeah.
do an EP, and there's consequences coming, which I believe that there are consequences coming for these people, and at the end of it, they will have their head on the stick, metaphorically. There's one called Magic Carpet Ride,
Yep.
which is like we're stuck in this magic carpet ride to who knows where, who knows when, for what no real particular reason that I can see. And you know, they can't even be bothered to explain where we're going to get to and why. You know.
Yeah, yeah. That reminded me actually of a song that badly drawing boy Damon Goff did called "Is It a Dream" on his Banana Skin album recently. And there's a lot of artists who are actually producing music at the moment, whether they're just starting out or established artists like yourself, that are now touching on Brexit, the Tories, the disaster that we're in. And there's definitely been a shift in the media of allowing people like yourself to get on there and talk about it. And that's only recently happened because, as we all know,
that's good, you know. But it's, I mean, the thing is, when you bloke like me makes a record, you got to write the song, you got to do a demo of it, you got to find somebody way of putting it out, and it's not as immediate as you like. But I mean, some of these songs go back a few years, and I do feel that I could see things coming, and why couldn't everybody else? Some people did, but do you know what? I was talking to my neighbour who's a stonemason. He's a pretty good stonemason. I discovered he's talked about Brexit, and you know, and I said it's really going to affect people, musicians, and like, oh, I'm going to earn more money because there's no Polish people in it. I said, all right, well, fair enough, but you know, I don't find that very kind of charitable of you. I would never vote for somebody to lose money or lose work. I said, anyway, what happens when you go abroad? What do you think? Oh, I've never been abroad. I said, what?
yeah.
You know,
And this is the thing, it's people voting to take away something that other people enjoy. They've never experienced themselves.
yeah.
It is so balmy. It's hard to get your head around it in any respects at all.
But anyway, look, I'm glad you're on the same page. But I think you're saying that other people were writing about these things, and you know, as I say, I quite admire Steve Bray. He's a bit of a laugh, but he don't give up. But I think all we can really do at the moment is be like gnats. You know, you just kind of biting at their ankles constantly, all the time, until they've had enough of it. You know, and we see you. You know, we just need more people till we see you. And I think I'll have the biggest laugh in the world if the Tories get decimated at the next election. I'm not Tariq Ali. I'm not Che Guevara. I'm sort of centre groundish kind of socialist. I'm not sure about Starmer, but I know I think he's 100 times better than the Tories. You know, they're inept.
Yeah. And you're right as well. I think a lot of our listeners aren't sure about Starmer, but they're savvy enough to realise that we need to get the grown-ups back in the room and that we need a Labour government who are at least competent and have their hearts roughly in the right place. And aren't in it for themselves, feathering their own nests. And that's
I think one of the best things I've seen about the election, somebody said it's not a taxi cab that takes you door to door.
Yeah.
It's a bus journey, and you get the bus that takes you the nearest to where you want to go. And I think that's what we got with Starmer. Some other people would dispute that, but some other people who would dispute that, who hate the Tories and also hate Labour, for the sake of kind of political purity, would be happy for the Tories to get back in. We just can't afford that as a country.
No, we can't. We can't. Unfortunately, we don't have PR at the moment. It's first past the post. You have to vote against what you don't want rather than for what you do want. And until we get PR, it's going to be hard to do that.
Yeah,
that's very, very true. So, Glenn, if people want to get hold of a copy of this album, whether it's on dirty orange vinyl, digitally, or on CD, where's the best place for them to go to pre-order?
Well, the album will, when it's out from the 27th of April, will be on iTunes and Spotify and all those kind of things. It's coming out on Cooking Vinyl, who go through Townsend Music, you know, where you can pre-order things, and you can actually download on iTunes and other things like that. Head on the stick right now, and it's on YouTube. And you can subscribe to me on YouTube. This is all kind of a bit new to me, really. I haven't really done this. digital aggregation before. It seemed like,
okay.
you know, I think you should make a record, and it comes in a little packet, and you go, yeah, that's 7 and 6 loose, sir. You know? Yeah,
Well, it's always nice to hold the sleeve in your hand and to appreciate the artwork, and that's something I think that is fortunately coming back now with vinyl in a reasonably big way, and even cassettes. I've heard people want to get hold of cassettes again.
Yeah, and the other one, I don't know that we're going to do it, but a few years back there was a big thing about 8-track cassettes, and there was not many people were putting them out, but people who had an 8-track cassette player would buy anything because they couldn't get any 8-track cassettes. So
then it's going to be it's going to be wax cylinders next. We're going to be going right back to the Stone Age.
There's an idea, you know. Yeah.
So, in terms of actually performing the album live, I know I think you did a gig recently, 17th of February, wasn't it? Have you?
Yeah, we played at a place in London called Nels.
That's right. Yeah,
private show at the Chelsea Arts Club, where I remember, which was jolly nice. That was good. We're going to do the 100 Club on the 6th of May, which I don't think has really been announced yet, but there you go.
Right, okay.
And we're setting some shows up. I've got about 6 weeks in the middle of the Blondie tour, January, February, March, April, end of April, all through May, and the beginning of June, the stuff there. And then the Blondie stuff goes up until the 1st of July, and then the world's my oyster after that. So hopefully, you know, if people like the record, which I've had some good feedback on it.
Yeah.
Well, come and see us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly love it, and I know our listeners were very excited when they heard "Head on a Stick."
Yeah, but I will say though, that, you know, as well as the sort of sociological, politico, agitprop kind of side, which I felt needs saying, there's some fantastic musicians on the album, and I think there's some really good tunes. You know,
there are.
So it's quite a musical. It's a very musical spleen venting, toe tapping.
No, it's really great, and like I say, I'm really looking forward to playing some more of the tracks over the coming weeks and months once it's released. But it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Glenn, and the very best of luck with the album and touring it. But before you go, would you just introduce our listeners to the title track, "Consequences Coming"?
All right, listen up, everybody. This is Glen Matlock, and you are about to listen to "Consequences Coming," because do you know what? I reckon they are.
Fantastic. Glenn, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, Ben. Thank you very much.
That is great. That's great. Thank you very, very much, Glenn.
All right.
This is 16 Million Rising. Part on.
God, Brexit's rubbish, isn't it? Good job there's a solution.